Oh, it's another video. Hi, how's it going? Welcome back to Collector Creations. In this video, I'm talking about 3D versus HDR. Um, they're both visual gimmicks that work to a certain degree, and arguably controversial, depending on who you ask. Oh God, how do I even... I had a comment recently talking about how they prefer 3D and how it's a noticeable difference in contrast to HDR, and they think that HDR changes too much of the color grade and it upsets them. I don't think that they were sulking about it, but it's also like, yeah, okay, I get you. You know, it made me consider for a second there. 3D is a lot more obvious of a visual difference than HDR, but at the same time, you look at something with HDR versus standard, dynamic range, and you'd be like, okay, there's still a difference there too. To the naked eye, yeah, obviously, but to the, to the observant person, maybe not. Because at least 3D, it's been around for such a long time, since, what, the 50s, maybe earlier. I know the Creature from the Black Lagoon had it, but was that the first, 3D boom in the mid-50s? I'm pretty sure it was earlier, but, everyone had gimmicks to get people to put butts in seats in cinemas, But we're not talking about cinemas here, because, of course, cinemas are weird. We're talking about physical media, because that's a lot more easy to talk about, at least. Now, in a modern day and age, 2024 speaking, obviously HDR graded films outsell 3D Blu-rays. 10 years ago, it was the opposite, because 4K was a very new thing, and 3D was still pretty popular, as well as you could access 3D. My Blu-ray player might have a 3D menu. It won't exactly say that you could watch 3D films on it, but I'm pretty sure you can, which is actually kind of cool. But my TV cannot play 3D. In fact, most TVs can't play 3D. And that's kind of the thing. So where 3D, again, is a much more noticeable gimmick, you put glasses on, things come out at you, it's wonderful if it's done well. Some films are optimized for 3D or have to be post-rendered for an extra couple $1,000,000 to be put into 3D, whether they get a 3D Blu-ray release or not. I know someone who loves collecting 3D Blu-rays of Marvel films because it's the cheap and easy way to get them. My collection of 3D films is exceptionally limited because I don't need to get 3D films, and the ones I do, I don't even remember. I know I've got Coraline on 3D, but that was because it was a double disc. It was one of those, the disc can be played as 2D and can be played as 3D, and it was cheaper to get that than it was to get the standard release. I've got 24 3D releases according to bluray.com, my app. So what do we have for a notable example? Outside of Creature from the Black Lagoon, and apparently one of the Saw films is in 3D. Apparently. I did not know that. Alfred Hitchcock collection, of course, because Dial for Murder in 3D. Piranha 3D. For some reason, Pompeii 3D, but I think, again, it comes with both on the same disc, so it was easy to get. Creature from the Black Lagoon, it came from outer space. That's actually 1953, so that's even earlier. I've got stuff like Prometheus and Blade Runner because they were steelbook editions and whatever, same as Friday the 13th, Part 3 obviously is in 3D, House of Wax in 3D because it comes with both versions, that's 1953 as well. Apparently my X-Men Cerebro collection, oh yeah, that comes with Days of Future Past in 3D, and again, that's a 2014 film, which is bizarre that that's in 3D, but same as Thor Ragnarok and The Hunger Games. Edge of Tomorrow 3D, because it came with both in one case. Prometheus Collector's Edition comes with the Blu-ray, the extended cut, the 3D version, and then Coraline and Alita Battle Angel. Not a lot of releases, and most of them are duplicates, again, like Creature from Black Lagoon. I've got several copies of that film in different sets, which is, a lot of fun. But again, you can't watch those on 3D. Or can you? Because with 4K HDR things, they're always a 4K UHD disc, whether they've got standard HDR10, HDR10 Plus, which is a lot harder to come by, or Dolby Vision. It's a lot more easy to find on a 4K disc, even though some of them might not even have HDR grading. Like Blade Runner 2049 doesn't really have HDR grading. As much as it says it does, it doesn't actually have HDR grading. But then, like, because that's just because Roger Deakins doesn't like HDR, so the way he shoots his films is the way they're meant to look. So 4K is still more detail, but he doesn't put in the HDR grade because he doesn't like it. Whereas other filmmakers do like it, so they will apply HDR grades to their films. Is it noticeable to the regular consumer? No, because again, it's so much. It's just an uptick in detail or a variation of colors. It just shifts it a little bit in one direction or the other. Some of it can be so minute you won't even notice it. Some of it will be like, yeah, you can see how it's worked and applied here, but then over there you can't see it, you know? Like, I've got two different players, both connected to the same TV. Both of them are 4K players, but my Sony player, the Dolby Vision, doesn't work on it, but HDR does. Whereas my Panasonic, both of them work. And if I want to like contrast between a standard Blu-ray and the 4K with HDR, I can put them both in and just click a little switch which is plugged into the back of the TV, and then just it flicks between the images so I can compare and contrast. And it'll obviously adjust the settings on the TV itself for like filmmaker mode for HDR or SDR, or the Dolby Vision mode for the Panasonic. So I can tell, I can look at the difference just by jumping back and forth. If I wanted to be much more analytical, I'd buy a second screen, but I'm not going to do that. But like, that's a thing you can watch. You can watch HDR films. You can turn it off too. There's settings on the players. You can turn off HDR and Dolby Vision. So if you don't want to watch that, you can just turn it off. You can also modify it so you can preset it to the way that you want it to look. Or if your TV is smarter and has filmmaker mode, then you can do that, whatever it might be. There are so many nitty-gritty little details of HDR that it becomes a complex thing. It becomes annoying for a lot of consumers who, you know, perhaps remember an original or different color grading, or just remember things in a different light than they were, and light is a key word, than they were initially on an older Blu-ray, on an older DVD, on a VHS, when they saw it in cinema 30 years ago. You know, stuff that I wouldn't believe with that one, but at least with the other ones I can make the argument, because you can have a physical copy to compare and contrast. And again, that's why people don't like HDR to some degree, because they're like, oh, I don't like how it brightens the image, or how it darkens the image, or this or that. And that's fair. If you're the bloody person watching it, if you don't want to use the HDR, or if you want to adjust the settings, whether it even changes the actual color timing and everything on your actual TV, you can do whatever you want. That's why they have these settings, so you can change them. They're preset on a disc, sure, but you can always change them, or just don't buy 4K films and then you don't have to worry about it. But at least with 4K, at least with HDR, you can watch it. It's there. It's accessible because it's a modern influence. It's a modern technique. But 3D doesn't exist, except when it does. Because when it does, you're like, how do I watch this? And I learnt recently, a couple months ago, if you have VR, you can watch 3D films, which is insane to me. I haven't actually tried it yet, but I have a PlayStation 4. Actually, I got a PlayStation 5 as well now. I'm pretty sure the VR stuff could probably work on that. I don't have the PS5, it's my brother's, and I co-own the PS4. But the PS4, we do have, my brothers had bought the VR headset, so you can still watch films on VR. And that's great, you know. You can put it on, just probably sit down, watch Creature from Black Lagoon in 3D. How amazing would that be? I wonder if you've noticed the key thing that is the reason why I don't like watching in 3D as much. I'm blind. So I have to put on another pair of glasses, which is not uncommon for a lot of people. It's annoying. And this isn't the reason why I prefer HDR over 3D. I do think 3D is a much more noticeable thing because, again, it is an active thing. It's actively coming out of you. That's, again, the gimmick of it all. So whether HDR is considered a gimmick or not, maybe. But either way, they're both technical things, technical enhancements to apply to a film. Gimmick in terms of a cinematic release, I'd say, because at least that's to get more butts and chairs like a 4DX or a D-Box or whatever, or Dolby Cinema. It's all the gimmick of making you think you're getting a better experience, and sometimes you might be. You know, sometimes you might want the interactivity and whatever, but that's cinema. It's a different thing to actually having, like, if I go to the Astor, they could have a 35 or 70mm print of a film, but they could also use their new 4K laser projection. It's not HDR graded or anything. It doesn't have Dolby Vision, or at least if it does, They don't really advertise that. So it's like, it's still just a 4K laser projection. Same as IMAX, for example. They will have 4K laser, digital projections and whatever, and then you can have film projections and then 3D projections. And a lot of IMAX stuff is in 3D, which is annoying, because I hate it. It's annoying. I have to wear, I don't know which one to wear. Glasses on top of glasses or glasses on top of glasses. I could get contacts, but I've tried that and I don't like contacts. They just don't work for me. I don't like touching my eyes that much. So, obviously, yeah, sure, if I could wear contacts, I would willingly go and see 3D a lot more often. But in terms of home media use, 3D so far as I know, unless you have an old 3D Blu-ray player, or even a current one that just happens to have 3D as just a little thing, which I think they all should. Why not? Why not have one that has, if it can play DVDs, which they all can, why not have it also play 3D, just in case? That'd be cool, I don't know. I feel like it should just be applied to everything, to be fair, but I guess it might just cost a bit more. I don't know. Who cares? But, I only have the accessibility for properly 4K with HDR, whereas I can't do that with 3D. If I put on my PlayStation, that's sure doable. Do I really want to? I mean, maybe, like House of Wax and, the 50s film, stuff that was, filmed in 3D. Again, Dial M for Murder, stuff that's, designed with that 3D when they were filming it, then yeah, sure, that'd be great. I saw Creature in the Black Lagoon in 3D at Acme, at a cinema, and that was wonderful, because it's the only way I could watch that film, even though, again, put on the PlayStation. But it's like, am I going to chuck on a VR headset? These aren't fun with a VR headset, even though I know most of the time you don't need to wear glasses with an actual VR headset. There is, stuff that you can alter to make it look better, to actually adjust to your, vision and whatever, but I also have two brothers who, well, we all have varying degrees of eyesight. My older brother is somehow still 20/20 after all these years. My younger brother also wears glasses, but he wears contacts a lot of the time. So, because he plays sport, he has to wear contacts. So, yeah, they don't have to worry about it, but also they're not going out and watching 3D movies. I don't even know if they know that you can watch 3D movies on the VR. I don't know. But it's one of those things where one is noticeable, again, to the regular consumer, but is also so far basically out of print, out of existence, that you don't really think about it. 3D Blu-rays go for really cheap because no one really uses the format. It's like VHS, even occasionally, I'd say maybe Laserdisc, but that seems to be much more of a collector's item, whereas VHS at least has a degrading nature to it because it degrades over time. But some of them you can get for really cheap because nobody wants them. Here's a 99-cent VHS of Speed from obviously 1994 because it was really popular and we don't want it anymore because we got the 4K at home, But nobody really buys, not a lot of people buy 3D anymore. It's not a big consumer thing, mostly also because it's just not a part of the consumer market anymore. The guy who mentioned the fact that Kong Skull Island outsold the 3D outsold the 4K. Yeah, because that was 10 years ago when 3D was still a thing on physical media. The fucking Marvel films were still being released on 3D all the way till at least 2018. But then 4K, now everything's on 4K. They were all remastered or at least upscaled to 4K and put on all 4K disc. You don't see the 3Ds anymore unless they just happen to be lying around in stores because nobody wants to buy them. The best 3D ones were the ones that had 2D as an accessible feature, so you could watch either, hence why I got Coraline in 3D, because it came with both. Alita was a steelbook. It came with the 4K, the Blu-ray, the 3D Blu-ray. It was just the best way to get it, So it comes down to that aspect of consumer habits have killed off 3D, but also studios killed off 3D. I can't blame the consumer that much, whether it was actually selling well or not. It's always up to the studio to decide, hey, we're not selling these anymore. We're not selling 3D TVs anymore. I remember when 3D TVs were the big thing, and they're just gone. They're hard to find now. So, maybe on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, that kind of stuff. But they're gone. It's vanished. I have a friend who has one. Because he has 4 TVs because he's got so many siblings. So it's just in one of their rooms. It's just a 3D TV. Do they use it for 3D? No. But, it's just a thing. And look, I still appreciate 3D, even though I've always had the problem of wearing glasses most of my life for at least 20 years. And I haven't been able to completely appreciate every single 3D film I've ever watched, because there's always an extra gap in between what goes where. Do I put the 3D glasses on first and then my glasses on top, because that already creates a bit of a dissonance in terms of what I'm actually looking at, or do I do it the other way around? It depends on the actual glasses. I think with IMAX, I have to put on the IMAX glasses first, because they're like designed like sunglasses or something, where it's like thick plastic to like really curve around your face, so you get like no added light blocking you or anything, which is a neat idea, until you have to clean them. But so yeah, it would be cool, obviously, if 3D was still easily available, at least TVs and whatever. But again, if TVs were automatically formatted to have 4K and 3D, then you could watch a 4K 3D film, which I don't think you can do. I don't know any film that's on 4K and 3D. Like Creature of the Black Lagoon, all the releases I have, all the 3D ones are Blu-ray releases. But there's 4K, but it's not a 3D version, at least I'm pretty sure it isn't. I don't even know how they would remaster that for 4K. So, yeah, at least with HDR, there's the factor of it still exists, it permeates because people are still buying 4K UHDs, and it's a consistent thing. You have the ability to turn it off, you have the ability to modify it. So, yeah, it's all about personal preference, realistically. So, whether you like 3D more over HDR, that's fine, but can you find 3D films so easily? I mean, again, probably, but not in regular retail stores. So, that's just the evolution of things. Again, 3D might come back in a couple of years' time or something, and then bam, there's a whole new explosive boom in 3D TVs and whatever, and people are making 3D films again. But the reason why 3D is a gimmick, at least in contrast to HDR for now, is that 3D comes and goes. It's been coming and going for like 60, 70 years now. It will appear in cinemas, and then it'll disappear, and then it'll come back, and then it'll go away again. That's just how it is. When Avatar came out in 2009, bam, 3D's back. And then for like the next couple of years, 3D was still there. I watched the Avengers in 3D. Could have watched a regular goddamn screening, but no, we chose 3D. But, 3D releases still occasionally happen. Like Avatar still came back. Avatar 2, 3D, but that was IMAX. It was a bit different, but that was also with the extra 120 frame rates or whatever the hell it was, so that's a whole different ballpark all to itself. But they're all just gimmicks in the end. HDR is, again, just what's so easily available for the consumer. I don't mean it to be a bad thing when I call it a gimmick, by the way. It's just a thing to sell. It sells more tickets. It sells you on the option. It's this one's got 3D, but this one's got HDR. But this one, everything comes out of you. But this one looks slightly better, if not completely better, because let's be honest, 3D's never looked great. My personal favorite 3D films are the ones that you get depth in the image, like, again, Darling for Murder, Creature from Black Lagoon, whereas something like, I don't know, The Avengers on 4K. Wow, look, it's Captain America's shield. Quick, dark. It just doesn't really vibe with me anymore, so yeah. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below if you prefer one or the other, or if you know more as to why one thing is more popular than the other. But yeah. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Adios. Whoa, he's coming to get you. No, see, I don't have 3D. I'm sorry. We'll just have to stick to 1080p. Because I'm not doing 4K. Are you kidding me?